7 women disappeared from Cedar Valley, Utah, in the winter of 1859. Territory for 3 weeks. Official territory files list them. How did you move to a large California family? But here I record it. I won't tell you. None of these women had a family in California. I don't own any of them. I left the city, without seeing the wagon, and none of them. What they all shared. The secret to destroying the Mormon leaders in southern Utah and bringing in federal forces directly. In their sacred valley. It was all women. They were many women. Married rituals hidden from government census and leaving no legal traces, and according to magazines. It was discovered in 1923 and buried under the floor of a collapsed hut. They are. He sold information about federal agents of weapon cache in Floyd Camp. Before us. The story continues with the fatal will that seals Serapeton and her fate, but the story of these 7 women. And the desperate measures taken to force them to be silent begin with the installation rather than with their lost disappearance. The tension that Mormon settlers created their own existence by threatening everyone they built in the desert. Cedar. The valley stretches as green scars through the harsh landscape of Utah, 30 miles southwest of Cell City. 1859. This colony of about 300 souls served more than other Mormons. Rural. It was a front post carefully located along the southern road to California. Travelers were able to rest, and territorial leaders could control who crossed their fields. The valley itself was wearing it. Scars of recent conflict. 2 years ago, President James Buchanan announced Utah Territory. Uprising and 2,500 federal forces sent to set up new territory. Governor. All the war in the UTA ended, serious blood, that is. The tension was slowly and aggressively leaning against me like water. The federal forces remained. At Floyd Camp, 40 miles are located to the northeast. Their presence with constant reminders. Washington's patience with Mormon autonomy was limited. Nathaniel Carrington controls Cedar Valley. Iron discipline of those who understand that survival depends on absolute unity. 42. Carrington. He ordered respect by a combination of authentic piety and calculated pragmatism. He has arrived in the valley. In 1851, in the third wave of Mormon pioneers, he brought experience with him. Irrigation and supernatural ability to read political winds. Under him. Leadership. Cedar Valley went from alkaline wastelands to productive agricultural vehicles with productive agricultural vehicles, flour factories. The dark group on the south side of Salt Lake City is the largest other grain. But Carrington. Secrets have been established that go far beyond the official community limits. Like many Mormon leaders of that time, I practiced some marriages rather than open polygamy, but it was expressed by foreigners. A deep system of spiritual wives whose legal status was intentionally ambiguous. Serapeton became his 4th wife at a ceremony held in the spring of 1857 by Thomas Hagen Sr.'s trip. The certificate was Carrington Margaret's first wife and was recorded in official documents. Sarah, 23, with intellectual green hair and eyes, joined the Mormon faith as a 17-year-old child. Ohio. She had something unusual among the pioneers of the Cedar Valley. Literacy aside from basic readings of the Bible. His father was an editor, the best in the newspaper. Before his call and migration to the West, in Cincinnati, he claimed that his daughter had the same education he was able to give his son. Combined with this education and its natural curiosity and its position. Carrington's multiple wives gave him access to information that most women on the territory never shine. Another. The women who disappeared this winter divided the situation. 26. Rebecca Dalton served his 3rd wife. Samuel Brennan controlled grain distribution in the valley. Catherine Fletcher. 19 was sealed by Bishop Jonas Whitman at the ceremony, violating the territorial marriage law. Mary Lou Kensington, 24, lived as the second wife of merchant William Harper. Marriages are carefully hidden from the census, and regularly cover Mormon settlements. Elizabeth Fairchard, 31, served his wife to multiple wives of Daniel Crawford, an unofficial Valley Master and guardian of territorial communications. Anna Sullivan, 22. It belongs to the household of David Singleton, who coordinated the proposal and was launched in a distant facility. Finally, there. Miriam Wallace, 28, including her husband Joshua, supported the small valley. Coordinated with Arsenal and the militia leaders across the region. These women legally lived in a shadow world. Although invisible, they are linked by the same religious and social obligations as sisters' wives. They existed. This service will give birth to separate children born in the Bible of the family, not the territorial register. Supported households that do not exist officially. This invisibility is intended for protection. They will ultimately earn money from federal judicial persecution. Winter 1858 to 1859. When snow fell in October, especially when the temperature was sharp and well below zero. In a few weeks. Sequestration, which is a generally protected community, such as the Sugi Valley, has become oppressive. The residents were more dependent than normal news from the outside world. It's been this long. Winter began to carefully demand weapons preparation in the Mormon colonies. The first sign of trouble came on a bitter February morning when Samuel Brennan found a hoof print in the snow around his grain repository. The truck belonged to at least 2 horses, one of which is not an excellent picture used. Volleyball blacksmith. More anxiety, riders appeared under the cover of darkness and spent quite a bit of time. Research into the basics of exterior walls and buildings. The Carrington brothers gathered the direction of the valley. Advice from the same night behind Harper Universal Store. The 7 people gathered. The rough-hewn table represents the informal government of Cedar Valley. Sam Carrington, Bishop Whitman, Samuel Brennan, William Harper, Daniel Crawford, David Singleton I. Joshua Wallace. These people organized communities through Kuznechikov, drought, federal ugly class. They have formulated plans for unexpected situations for various emergency situations, but the scripts they encountered. On a February night, she did not appear in their most pessimistic calculations. Federal agents asked for it. The question said Crawford, whose weeding hands tremble slightly when he spoke. 3 men crossed Fellfield. Last week, I was called a farmer buyer, but Mrs. Henderson, a pension. He heard them and discussed Kesha's weapons and supply routes. They specially mentioned Cedar Valley. The room fell. Silence. Except for the wind running through the gaps in the log walls of the store. Each person understands the outcome. After the Utah War, territorial authorities demanded all colonies maintain defensive positions and emergency supply. Arsenal of Cedar Valley hidden in the natural cave system. 2 miles southeast of the city were equipped with small rifles and ammunition. If federal authorities discover this money, they can use it as an excuse for martial law. Southern Utah. Bishop Whitman, his gray whiskers, travel frost. We meet again and lean forward into his chair. How can they know what we prepare? We took note. Only. The family's heads were experiencing place and didn't say anything to women who could compromise security. It was Joshua. Wallace expressed that they were all afraid. Someone said. Someone who knows enough to turn them to the right. It's direction, but not enough to give both. The debate continued after midnight. Each. His own home study for potential security disorders. They looked at various scenarios. Not careful. Talking about gossip among young people, women, even possible that one of the pagan merchants in the valley was. Look at their activities. But as they spoke, more surprising plans began to emerge. Daniel Crawford pointed out that his wife, Elizabeth, is asking unusual questions about his communications with the SALT quote. William Harper recalls Rebecca Dalton and questions the contents of the Northern Supply wagon. Samuel Brennan admitted that his wife Rebecca showed unexpected interest in the locations of various storage facilities around the valley. These are many wives, Carrington, and finally. His voice is barely higher than a whisper. They pass through our household like shadows. They listen to the conversation, look at the documents and understand more than we gave them alone. The blame was interrupted in the air, smoke, bitter and inevitably. These people loved multiple women and risked prosecuting them and marrying them. He has established the deepest spiritual obligations regarding the principles of heavenly marriage. But they too. I realized that their invisible state made these women particularly vulnerable and potentially vulnerable to federal pressures. A valuable information provider. During next week, each one began chasing the house. There is a suspicion that the spy will come in the opposite direction. Samuel Brennan discovered that Rebecca had a regular collection trip. Eggs from a farm 2 kilometers south of town. A trip that transferred to the right. A hidden entrance to the main cache weapon. William Harper discovered that Mary Lou's sewing basket contains a small laptop. Random observations on weather and agriculture are met by the fact that each record still seemed to not understand. It corresponded to the date the wagon arrived from a quote from the SALT. Evidence accumulated under the snow. Gradually, then the majority of mountain passes. Elizabeth Crawford saw that he spoke to foreigners on the day of the adjacent Fellfield market. Catherine Fletcher is obsessed. Information about security times she didn't need to know. Anna Sullivan asked an acute question. Protected location of the valley. Miriam Wallace shows extraordinary interest in her husband's police. In correspondence, it was Sarah Pemberton who provided the final evidence. March 8, 1859, Elder. Carrington has made discoveries that changed the hints of confidence. By searching for his documents. Research, he found a letter to Sarah's careful writing, with precise explanations of details, by what is visible, by what is visible. Cedar Valley weapon cache location. The letter had no address, but the content left him unquestionable. The alleged beneficiary. Federal authorities are investigating the defensive formations of Mormons. The letter is not open. It's just a place, but a tactical note. Sarah looked at the angle of death. For the defense of the valley, the ammunition ratings were stored and determined which main flow routes could be. You will be interrupted to isolate the community. Most of everything she offered. A detailed calendar of supply protection and supply that can only come from people with intimate access. Leadership planning session. Carrington reads the letter 3 times, and each reading makes him confirm him. I desperately wanted to deny it. Sarah had intelligence that went far beyond random observations. Someone was shared with her strategic information, or she systematically collected it for several months. Observation. That night he met his first wife, Margaret, and the only person to witness her marriage to Sarah. Margaret's reaction confirmed his worst fear. She was. I realized that Sarah had asked her questions. An argument that should not have attracted appeals to women focusing on family bonds. She said she wanted. Margaret understands your work better. His voice is heavy with the weight of betrayal. She said it would be. If you understand the problems our community is facing, help her serve the best women. I thought it was showing dedication to your profession. Samples exceeded individuals. Margaret's behavior shows that she observed an informal conversation between several women between individuals. Religious conference. These women, isolated from the formal decision process, have been developed their own information network. They share observations, compare notes about their husband's activities. Think about public affairs with analytical attention that requires their intelligence and education. They feel excluded. Margaret said they didn't take into account the census file and knew the birth of the child. I officially engraved that if something happened to my husband, they had no legal situation. I think they are. I began collecting information to protect myself to understand the power that can destroy it. Family. But defenses have turned into something visible and more calculated. In the coming days, they have discovered evidence since the Leadership Council continued its investigation. Several women systematically documented confidential information. Rebecca Dalton has a sketch of a cereal warehouse that contains hidden storage details. Compartment. Catherine Fletcher has compiled a list of community members with military experience. Mary. Kensington maintains detailed files of delivery that were accurately correlated with federal information. Report the range of intelligence was amazed at the Valley's management. These women were rejected. An appendix that is invisible to real people making community decisions created rivals, cognitive networks. Everything the federal government can establish by using normal espionage. Joshua Wallace discovered it. The final piece of the puzzle. On March 15, he was given his rifle and hidden inside the armed reserve. He found a small dough in a small roll of bills totaling $67. More money than most farmers saw in a year. The invoice had mint indicating that they were. It is released by a federal bank in California, not by a local territorial agency. The money was a payment. Some women do not collect information from curiosity or protection of self-construction. They sold intelligence with federal agents. This implementation was hit by community management as a physical blow. These women associated with the most sacred religious obligations systematically betray secrets. This could lead to military occupation and the destruction of everything that Mormon pioneers built on Utah's territory. With the launch of federal payments, the Leadership Council's response has changed response from the crisis investigation. Control. The Carrington brothers called an emergency meeting on March 18, bringing together 7 men at spare dawn. Samuel Brenna's root cellar darkness, 20 feet underground, isolated. Earth's layers and vegetables are kept with all the listening possibilities. The situation has evolved beyond simple betrayal. If federal agents get more detailed intellectual information about the protection and supply network of Cedar Valley, they can use this information to justify immediate military operations. Most importantly, agents may need evidence of the source. Adaptation. This not only shows illegal weapon cushions, but also shows the entire structure of multiple marriages. He worked carefully to hide. They know too much to disappear. Bishop Whitman noticed that his voice resonated strangely in a limited space. Federal agents plan to stay in touch with their sources. If a woman disappears, this can cause accurately the type of investigation we are trying to prevent. David Singleton, the woman. Anna was one of those discovered with doubtful intelligence and raised another surprising opportunity. And in the case, in addition to what we discovered, have they already provided information? And if federal agents know others? Community, other weapons? Our women can be part of a coordinated cognitive manipulation. It covers the entire territory. Reports of the potential impact scared council members. That's what Cedar Valley was like. Mormon Colonial Communication Center in the Southern Reward Ute. Information collected there. Potentially place protective drugs over thousands of square miles. An exhibition of tens of thousands of Mormon families in federal punishment. Daniel Crawford, whose male function gave him the idea of territorial communication, provided cooling. Evaluation of their time scale. The federal forces at Floyd Camp held regular patrols. Although it is territory, the program was changed last month. They focus on arrival areas. Matches the main supply routes and defensive positions. Someone is. We provided a very specific guide. The evidence suggests a coordinated effort that goes far beyond an opportunistic betrayal. Systematically recognized and possibly identified by the same wife. Especially since their invisible legal status made them aware of the secrets of the community. They are vulnerable to federal pressure. William Harper remembers that the store was an unofficial public center. Seeing foreigners in the city, they said they went to traders, but showed little interest in buying product. They spend most of their time talking to people and asking questions. Local families and public organizations. I suggested that they were only curious tourists, but now they are models. The federal intelligence reporting rally became more clear as council members shared their observations. There was an agent. For several months in the valley, perhaps from last summer, gradually establishing relationships. Identifying potential sources and vulnerable people who may be convinced to provide information. Sarah Peton's education made it particularly valuable as intelligence. Sauce. Unlike most pioneering women, she was able to read and understand complicated documents. Analyze strategic information using military terminology and complexes. Understand. His post as a few marriages Carrington gave him access to discussions about leadership, but the invisible legal status desperately required a kind of security and awareness. They promised them. Carrington said, his voice was heavy with the weight of consciousness. If federal authorities were in control, protection, legal recognition, perhaps even territorial transport. These women are always afraid that they can declare their marriage illegal, their children illegal. Federal agents gave way to them. But there was a proposal. Trap. Many women made it when they embraced the payment and supply of intelligence. They reached themselves a federal spy. If they are discovered by territorial authorities, they face the possibility. Accusation of betrayal. If they are left by the federal manager, they will face confidence in the expulsion of the community and all the losses they tried to protect. The council handed the clock. By analyzing options, each option has destructive consequences. They can try. It will showcase federal approval operations, which will require disclosure of their own details. They promise to maintain defensive training and awareness of the existence of multiple marriages. They can try. There will be negotiations with federal authorities, but negotiations will be guilty and lead to further investigations. Samuel Brennan proposed the decision to continue the Cedar Valley for decades. And if they were there, will federal agents come back? And if they decide to move to a safer location, where is it beyond the scope of territorial policy? No to the proposal. The man wanted to be clear. But they were surrounded as they sat in the suffocating darkness of the root cellar. As part of the winter supply of community food, they began planning what later was called the Cleansing Alliance. Anon. An agreement to maintain the security of their communities and ensure that their intelligence can escape. I will not testify against them. Serapeton felt danger early in the morning. On March 22, she realized how Elder Carrington saw her with the careful attention of those who studied cows in the market. His usual warmth was replaced by what he tried to crave his skin. Combination. Cold disappointment and assessment suggesting that their relationship has changed fundamentally. Move. The behavior extends beyond her husband. The atmosphere grew with implicit tension throughout Cedar Valley. The conversation stopped when some women entered the room. My husband started asking acute questions about his daily activities. Request a detailed explanation of the usual instructions. Several women have proven to be increasingly isolated from their sisters, they have been excluded from their families and excluded. The argument that once piqued them. Margaret Carrington has always treated Sarah with kindness. Now he looked at her with indistinguishable suspicion. During their general household chores, Margaret commented on it. They endured the consequences that Sarah liked not to explore too carefully. How is it strange? Many people notice. Margaret noticed when he prepared bread to cook that week. Not really. Most women who are interested seem to attract people with different loyalties. Attempts to support Sarah's normal. Members of the community start to deal with it, and like other women, the ruts are becoming more and more difficult. A potential threat. When she visited Harper's Universal Store, William Harper saw her move with evidence. Doubt, notice the subjects and time she studied, and how long she stayed in the building. During worship service, she became another suspect in this section. It's not a participant. Isolation created a unique form of fear. Sarah. They began to realize that she and 6 other women were classified as enemies of the community they served. Conscientiously, I'm a year. Their invisible legal status has now made them the protection against persecution of federal judicial law. They are vulnerable to official documents and actions that can be taken without responsibility. March 25, Sarah. They found clear evidence that his situation was desperate. Considering her husband's studies, she discovered a letter partially completed by Carrington written to the territorial authorities of the city of Cell City. The letter describes security issues related to a particular community. Participants and manuals requested individual relocation procedures. That loyalty has become doubtful. Clinical language could not hide character outcomes. Community management had sought official approval to withdraw multiple wives from Cedar Valley forever. The link to the move procedure suggested planning something. Territorial authorities leave no traces on federal agents. That night, Sarah made a decision to decide whether she would live or die in the coming weeks. Instead of resisting, her husband used the same thing to start his intelligence directly. Skills to give value to federal agents and gather information about its community level. Elimination. His investigation is demonstrated by the existence of the Council of Emergency Leaders. Conferences and development of what they called the Cleansing Alliance. Carefully observe the pattern. Sarah, who heard that it would move a fragment of a conversation, gathered a general plan. This would eliminate multiple wives in the valley and maintain their plausible explanations. Absence. The plan was elegant in its simplicity and frightened me by the outcome. Women are told. They were transferred to a safer community far from the attention of the federal government. They travel to small groups under the protection of community members of the community and take remote routes. Mountain roads where accidents can occur naturally. If someone investigates him, community provides documents showing that women have decided to move spontaneously. Sarah's opening in the plan coincides with what is increasingly obvious. Observation. Joshua Wallace began following his wife Miriam during her daily activities and took notice of her route and time of absence at his house. David Singleton spent time uninvited checks of Anna's personal effects, looking for additional evidence of her intelligence. Activities. Samuel Brennan asked Rebecca a lot about her past. Talked to foreigners who need details of a meeting that took place a few months ago. It was pressure. It was designed to prevent communication with women and adjust the answer to the situation, but was created. I observed that someone's opportunity is bold enough to recognize the scheme and act according to this perception. Above. On March 28, Serapeton made contact with Catherine Fletcher at an accidental meeting in Commonwealth. Use. In a carefully coded language, she confirmed that Catherine also noticed the modified behavior and felt impending danger. More importantly, Catherine said she'd heard of Manager Whitman discussing the travel agreement. An agreement with Daniel Crawford, including escort and mountain responsibilities. Extraction. 2 women agreed to warn the other women. Cooperation. Over the next 3 days, use thin signal networks. In a short meeting, they managed to contact Rebecca Dalton, Mary Lou Kensington, Elizabeth Crawford, Anna Sullivan and Miriam Wallace. All women. I checked the same model. Increased observations, questionable questions, and discussions between husbands about security measures and community protection. When we thought that was. I saw it all. Sarud Valley's fear intensifies. If this story gives you cool, share this video with friends who love dark puzzles. Instead of pressing a button as a button to support the content. Forget subscribing to such story mistakes. Let me open, it will happen. By April 1st place, 7 women desperately understood their situation. They were targets. A coordinated elimination plan to remove them forever, providing stories that meet both territorial authorities and federal agents. The only hope for their survival was salvation. But I run away. The Cedar Valley in early spring means the intersection of mountain passages, which remained blocked. The very territories managed by the community who want to eliminate them. Sarah Patong volunteered to serve as the group coordinator using her educational advantages and her position. Like Senior Carrington's wife, he gathers information about temporary size and community procedures. What she found in her husband's personal document on April 3 confirmed their worst fears and began. The countdown determines whether one of them will live to watch the summer. Documents that have closed their fate. The wives of several women in Cedar Valley were written in a letter of April 2, 1859. He was sent to Bishop Samuel Richards of Salt Lake City. Sarah found it. The hidden under other newspapers in her husband's paintings is clearly waiting for a final revision before sending it. Letter. Exhibits cleaning, written with Carrington elders' exact writing. With the term alliances have made their deadly and fatal intentions accurate. C7. Those whose loyalty to our community has compromised. Protocol. The letter states. The group will depart along the South Road through Cedar Canyon on April 8, organized by the brothers David Singleton. Similar premise for the second group. From April 12, the eastern pass through the top of the soldiers. This document reflects a voluntary move to establish a colony on Nevada's territory. But that was the case. The final paragraph of the letter revealing the essence of the decision. You need to prove a natural danger. To be overcome in the mountains, the territorial authorities are informed that these people have decided to continue west despite warnings about seasonal travel conditions. The Crawford brothers prepared a document showing them intent to establish a new home in California outside of federal jurisdiction. Sarah understood that she read a murder plot that disguised administrative news agency. Natural dangers and the vast mountain passages were intentionally an up-and-coming expression for engineers. There was community leadership. I decided that 7 women knew too much to live, but their exclusion should look like a coincidence to avoid the initiation. A federal investigation they tried to prevent. On a temporary scale, he gave him 5 days to save 7 lives. Tonight. Using the signal they developed the previous week, Sarah called out the remaining 6 women at an emergency meeting. In an abandoned route cellar behind Fletcher Properties. The original intended 8-foot depth excavation. Winter storage of food has never been completed, subject to complete concealment for their hopeless meetings. There. I'm going to kill us, Sarah said without the preamble. A short opportunity in the Carrington research. Not immediately, not easy. They organize accidents that will eliminate us forever and provide a satisfying explanation. Someone who can ask questions. Group reactions differed due to distrust. Horror. However, detailed knowledge of Sarah plans, including specific dates and routes, convincing them. His intelligence was correct. Rebecca Dalton retains self-awareness due to a few weeks of increase. The pressure was completely broken when Sarah explained the document. The post office turns them into voluntary immigrants in California. We. Catherine Fletcher said. The value of what she offered tonight before she began moving along on their schedule. But I run away. He presented a problem that is clearly insurmountable. The Cedar Valley sat in an enclosed natural swimming pool. It still may in the snowy mountain range. Established traces were controlled by the community. A loyal member of the Leadership Council. You can intercept it with an attempt to start immediately. It's easy to ride a horse that is familiar with each possible route. Mary Lou Kensington, whose husband manages the supplier, has given him decisive intelligence on the only way to escape. There is a mine route through the acrylic mountains that connect to the Canyon Bingham district, she explained. It's impossible for a wagon, but people can cross. Bingham, Canyon, we were able to go literally quote from the salt and contact federal authorities directly. The route takes them. After 45 miles of wild mountains in early spring, without guaranteeing it. Federal authorities will protect them, even if they survive the trip. But it represents their only option. A certain death at the hands of people they once trusted their lives. Elizabeth Crawford, oldest. The 31-year-old group raised questions that no one wanted to resist. And our kids? And the family we leave? The moral complexity of their situation created a painful dilemma. Sarah herself was. 2 small children of Carrington alumni, and their abandonment, were intended to accuse them of believing their mothers. He left them. But leaving meant certain death and the possibility that their children could be said. He died in a tragic accident. If you measure, no one can protect you, he finally said. If we are alive, we may finally find a way to meet. We assure that our families or at least our children know the truth about what happened to us. Deciding to implement. It's more necessary than emotional commitment. This required careful planning and specific performance. The woman is resting. Using their collective knowledge of valley procedures, the development of its escape strategy and the night development. Geography that determines the window of potential capabilities and resources. Where did Anna Sullivan know when her husband checked the race on the suggestion? Emergency food covers are stored throughout the mountains. Miriam Wallace married to the community. Heavy Guardian provides information about the protected location needed during escape. Catherine Fletcher, the youngest, is the most familiar with mountain paths in her childhood. We provided a guide to the most insidious parts of the route. They agreed to leave separately. Over the next 2 days, we will use various prepositions to explain temporary absence at home. Sarah will apply. Once you get into the disease and enter a remote cabin, you will probably recover on your own. Rebecca and Mary Lou voluntarily participate in the adjacent colonies. Elizabeth and Anna visit your family in a remote farming community. Ekaterina and Miriam join a group of young women. Medicinal herbs from the hills. Each woman will transport minimum supplies to avoid doubt and meetings. Before starting a mass trip to salt types, along the mining truck and federal protections that expressed their only hope of survival. April. On the 6th of 1859, when the dawn light began filtering through the tops of other mountains. In Cedar Valley, 7 women have begun planning their escape. Death occurred on their own terms and did not follow a carefully organized schedule of community murder. The Serapeton flight from Cedar Valley began on April 7 at 4:30 a.m. Renovated her husband's house with a little mountain and the hottest clothes she can manage. No inspiring doubts. The exact darkness provided the perfect coating when heading towards the first one. Point. They set out of a mining camp 3 kilometers northeast of the city. Catherine Fletcher. We arrived first, followed in a few minutes by Elizabeth Crawford and Anna Sullivan. Their tweets were welcomed. The nerve energy of women who understood that they were dedicated to the paths they couldn't do. Come back. Rebecca Dalton and Mary Lou Kensington joined them shortly before sunrise. Together they reach safety or die together in the mountains. Miriam Wallace has never arrived. 6. The woman was waiting for the perfect light. Scanning the path is approaching certain signs of missing companions. Finally, Catherine Fletcher volunteered to return to the valley. Returns in an hour with destructive news. Joshua Wallace's home showed signs of an unusual lesson early in the morning. Along with some community leaders, they met in what looked like an emergency meeting. I think they found it. Absent, Catherine said, her voice is heavy with the outcome, that means. They know that the rest of us have also left. The discovery has dangerously accelerated their schedule, but returns have returned. The options are long. Returning means meeting if community leadership knew of an attempt to escape. Immediate implementation of liquidation plans. Their only option was to move forward and hope they could. Before organized persecution intercepts them, we reached the Salt Lake City. Operating path through mountains tested by Aqua. Their endurance for everything they expected. The snow is staying deep in many areas, forcing them to unleash their way. Through drifts that hide free rocks and hidden cracks. The increase in height causes them to suffocate in the air. The constant threat of an avalanche required meticulous navigation in the unstable snow fields. But physical. Psychological pressure next to the finger problem, knowing they are hunting for them. In their first halfway through. On the day they were able to see how runners moved through the fields of the valley behind them and systematically validate the possibility of escape. Route. The trackers had excellent knowledge of the field, the best equipment and the benefits of horses. But they also had to support the fiction that it was a rescue mission, not a hunt. Sarah. Education proved decisive on the second day of the mountain when they found this spring. Blizzard blocked the itinerary planned through Canyon Bingham. She was able to interpret the characteristics of the landscape. Determine an alternative path to place them in mining camps around the park. The route was long. And, more dangerous, this allows them to avoid the main path their pursuers expect to intercept. Of theirs. Elizabeth Crawford collapsed from fatigue on April 9, but could not continue. Desperate encouragement for the group. Her 31-year-old body has weakened for years. Malnutrition and multiple pregnancies, they were unable to resist physics. Requirements for early spring mountain trips. Other women face painful choices. Let her save me. Take risks and stay with you yourself, or the entire capture. Sarah decided that. Decide for the rest of your life. She volunteered to stay with Elizabeth, and the other 4 continued. Salt Lake City. If they succeed in federal authorities, they can. I returned using the 2 women left behind. If they're captured or killed. Elizabeth dies with at least one companion, and is not alone in the desert. What should I tell them? Really arrived, Sarah asked how the group was preparing for separation. Tell them about weapon cache. Intelligence network and murder plans. Make sure someone knows us. He did not voluntarily reject our family. We were exiled by the man who decided us. They were more dangerous to live than the dead. Catherine Fletcher, Rebecca Dalton, Mary Lou Kensington and Anna Sullivan play the path of performance and mining roads to the territorial capital. Serapeton and Elizabeth Crawford find a shelter in abandonment. The Avenue cabin they were waiting for salvation. Official records show that there are 7. The woman safely reached her destination. Territorial documents are subject. Solta, OIS, City on April 15, 1859 shows that he is Elizabeth Serapeton. Crawford, Catherine Fletcher, Rebecca Dalton, Mary Lou Kensington, Anna Sullivan and Miriam Wallace voluntarily moved to California's Nevada territory to participate in the expansion. Family. A letter written by the woman herself, "Thank you to the community of Cedar Valley. Their kindness and explanation of seeking opportunities in more regulated areas was placed on territory archives." However, private magazines and family notes tell different stories. Joshua Wallace. A personal newspaper discovered during the demolition of his house in 1889. Includes notes explaining the necessary steps taken to maintain the community. Safety and successful solutions to intelligence problems. Daniel Crawford. Responses with territorial authorities include links to eliminate security and constant risks. Deciding to invade federal. Samuel Brennan is the most unning of all. The book on the account shows payments to mountain guides and exclusion experts that clearly match the date. Suspicious woman. The total amount is expressed as $200. A significant amount that can only be justified by the most serious security issues. 4 women who continued to salt were intercepted on April 11 in just 15 miles. Destination. Their bodies were discovered the following spring by Mormon settlers, among visible victims. Display and fatigue in the mountains during winter. Federal authorities are adopting the explanation they had. He was defeated by unexpected weather conditions and tried to go to California. Serapiton and Elizabeth Crawford. He survived mountain ministers until the end of April, when the limited reserves were finally closed. Sarah's latest magazine. An entry written to the Visible April 28, 1859. The last day. Elizabeth spent her time peacefully this morning. I have maybe the food for the remaining 2 days. The snow melts, but I don't have enough strength to move further. If someone finds it. Words, we know that we are not traitors, but the woman who discovered that one of them creates an invisible state is. Security requires the elimination of offensive witnesses. Miriam Wallace's fate remains the most mysterious aspect. Total incident. Official file shows her leaving Cedar Valley in April. The 8th place, but his highly called Nevada letter contains suggestive details. Intimate knowledge of public events that occurred several months after his departure. Some historians believe her. I agreed to cooperate with the liquidation plan in exchange for its own survival. Provide false testimony about the voluntary departure of other women who remain hidden in Mormon community under a new personality. The Cleansing Alliance had somehow managed to. Main purpose. Federal agents have not found a systematic collection of information by Mormon women. And the weapon cache remains hidden. 1896. 7 women with dangerous knowledge simply disappeared. Historical recording. Their loss disaffected as explained in the 2 satisfied documentation. Territory and federal authorities. However, the cost of this success has continued. In addition to the lives of 7 women. The man who ordered and made an exception is trapped. The very secret that protected their community. Joshua Wallace has begun. Drinking heavily several months after his wife's loss, eventually died in 1863 for his doctor. It is diplomatically known as liver complications. Samuel Brennan developed what his contemporaries called nervousness. Fatigue, sale of property, moved to California in 1861. Daniel Crawford suffered from nightmares repeatedly, and she made her cry in her dreams, scaring the rest of her family. Members gain the reputation of those charged with anonymous charges. Elder Nathaniel Carrington maintained his position as a community leader until 1865. When he announced his intention to serve the mission in the Eastern Province. He has never returned to Cedar Valley. Information shows that he died of pneumonia at a boarding school in Philadelphia in 1867. His first wife, Margaret, later told his family he admitted his deathbed amidst the evil he needed. Although their commitment to protecting their community, he never reveals specific details about his perception. The Cedar Valley community itself began to decline after 10 years of cleaning. Young family. He left, mentioning the unhealthy atmosphere and the terror of the valley rumors. A tragedy that lasted despite official denials. Irrigation systems were classified as decomposition as a community. Cooperation is getting worse. In 1875, he remained with fewer than 50 residents. Previously it was a prosperous colony of 300 souls. Research from the modern historian. The Utah era focused on an extraordinary number of women who finally disappeared from the Mormon colony. In the 1850s, the legal status of several wives, especially their legal status, remains ambiguous. Official recordings always show that these women voluntarily moved to other territories, but genealogy studies. He could not find evidence of their other presence in the community they would have settled. 1923. The opening of Serapeton magazine, buried under the floor of a crumbling mountain hut, provided it. The first specific evidence that official stories may be incomplete. But even this finding has risen even further. The answered question. The latest records in the magazine describe events and individuals. Other historical recordings suggest intelligence networks controlled by many women. What Cedar Valley leadership doubted. Even more amazing is the link to Sarah magazine. Communication with federal contacts that have not only paid for information but also promised protection. Women and their children if territorial authorities discover their activities. Because this materialization protection is not possible, federal approval operations are. It's more complicated than a simple effort to gather information about Mormons' weapon cache. Now some historians theorize. Several women have been taken and provided information during competing intelligence reports projects. A federal agent who had no intention of protecting the source after receiving this information. Follow. In this theory, women were spent on a wider strategy designed to destabilize Mormon territorial authorities. Thanks to the systematic elimination of internal security networks. The truth is, we wonder what happened in Cedar Valley in the spring of 1859. She passed away along with the participants. The results were expanded to the American West. Federal authorities continue to investigate Mormon community for years after the official end of the war in Utah and the program. Witnesses disappeared saying that the Cleansing Alliance might have served as a model for similar manipulation of others. Region. In 1934, during the repair of an old building in Cadarbal, the manufacturer found a wooden box containing personal belongings belonging to 7 missing women. Family laws, engagement rings, and as the family claimed, small pictures. Lost decades ago. This detection caused a resumption of interest in the case, but the territorial files for this period were carefully performed. It has been published to remove references to confidential security issues. The final part of the evidence appeared in 1961. Demolition of Samuel Brenna's cereal warehouse opens a hidden compartment containing detailed weapon cards. Kesha in southern Utah. The card is handwritten notation corresponding to a sample of a missing woman. The suspicious letters suggest that their intellectual activities are far more extensive than anyone could imagine. But perhaps the most frightening discovery was the list of names attached to the cards. Not just the 7 women. It disappeared from Cedar Valley, but dozens of other Mormon colonies have crossed territory and made their wives. In addition to many of these names, someone is taking a small mark with red ink. Historian. Trust me, these notes showed that the women were approved by various funds between 1858 and 1862. This enigma shows people who are consciously excluded from official files and legal protections as invisible people. When their existence threatens those in power, it becomes consumption. There were several women from Cedar Valley. The intelligence and independence that their communities theoretically assess have proven to be dangerous in practice. When they are there, knowledge is responsible. Their invisible status not only allows their exclusion, but also made explanation simple. Far. What do you think about this story? You think it's all revealed? Or do you think there are still some secrets in the mountains around Cedar Valley? Leave a comment below. Your reflection on what actually happened to these 7 women. If you enjoy this story and want something more historical mysteries like this, subscribe to our channel, press notification bell and share this video with your loved ones. A dark story from America's hidden past. The truth about our history is often it's more intrusive than we imagined. And there are more secrets than we await disclosure. Please meet next video.